We are creating our future every moment, in every action, in every deed. Most importantly, the power of our thoughts and our words and our intention in everything we do with everyone we're with. It's in the simple that we can create more effective change, in the notion of being enough, which is something that we don't actually taught or express in our society. It's actually to the contrary. It's like the culture is, we're not enough. We need to do more. We need to be more. It really can get in the way of what we're hoping in our hearts.
Welcome, dear ones. Thank you to those of you that are joining us for our We Are Nature pilgrimage to Avebury this weekend. We are so delighted to be able to offer some in-person community events. And we're looking forward to a beautiful, sunny, soulful adventure of the heart and in connection with the earth. It's our collaboration with the Noisily Body, Mind, Soul area. And so just wanted to say thank you to Helly Cameron and Flo Cannon Audley, who I've been organising this with. And we will be hosting a panel at the festival in July as well. And I'll be sharing a workshop on intuition there too. After our journey through the sacred sites of Avebury, we will have a speaker discussion event with our guides, Charlotte Pulver and Chris Park, who you might not know yet, but he's going to be next week's guest on the podcast. And our previous guest, Bruce Parry, Ada Paris, and today's guest, Jimena. Today is a powerful new moon and solar eclipse, a day that is said to be in yogic traditions, one where your practice is 1,000 times more powerful than an ordinary day, which makes it the perfect day to begin our intuitive flow journey. And I am grateful that I'm now going to be going on midsummer pilgrimage between this new moon and the solstice to Avalon, Avebury, and Stonehenge, which is going to really increase the field of intention and power around this journey into intuitive flow, which is now available to all that identify as women and want to really come into a space of embodying their intuitive wisdom. And the way in which we're doing it is through a lot of practices and transmission and going way beyond the intellect. So it comes into this space of embodiment, and that the field of our community means that we can deepen and expand what is possible for each other. We are also planning our in-person gathering for the 6th to the 12th of September. This will be for only 150 people, and it's going to be a co-created gathering out in nature on this beautiful land with a pond to swim in, and we'll be co-curating the schedule and the offerings based on who is there, with incredible food, which will be headed up by a beautiful chef. And then everyone that's coming will have the opportunity to offer workshops and music and ways of being and connecting ritual, so that this can be a gorgeous and fully soul nourishing gathering. And so the way that we're going to be offering out these places on the gathering is first to our Presence Collective members, as we have been on such an incredibly powerful journey over this pandemic through the collective, and then to our wonderful patrons, so anyone that's been supporting the making of this show. And then we'll offer out the tickets to our general newsletter. So please do make sure that you're connected, either as a member of Presence Collective or a patron, or that you're signed up on the newsletter. You can find out more if you go to our website and click on community and support. So we're at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co. And as soon as we're ready to properly announce the gathering and that people can make their contributions in order to be part of this gathering, you'll be the first to know. So first Presence Collective, then the patrons, and then in the general newsletter. And we're also creating a team of volunteers to co-create the gathering. So if you're interested in getting involved, especially in terms of offering art and being part of that build team and making the space really beautiful, or any other part of the actual organizing in the run-up to the gathering between now and then, please do send us an email. So if you go to our website, you'll find a link to send us a message, or it's simply connect@thefutureisbeautiful.co. All organizers and participants, including myself, will have to buy a ticket or if you like, contribute financially, as that money goes towards the build and also the food. And then, we will all co-create together, and so looking forward to this offering and to gathering a small group of us in person for what I'm sure will be a potent, nourishing, refreshing, and joyful experience. My guest today is Jimena Paratcha, mother, community leader, conscious entrepreneur, and horsewoman. As founder of Action for Brazil's Children's Trust, Jimena oversaw the development of 22 project partners in 5 major cities of Brazil, guiding the NGO to become a founding partner of Street Child United, a global platform voicing the rights of young people at risk around the world. Fulfilling 20 years working in the social justice sector, the emerging environmental crisis called for her to focus on campaigning for fossil-free Sussex and ecocide law. A dynamic activist for transformation of the inner and outer landscapes, Jimena has meanwhile nurtured a keen interest in diverse healing and energy work modalities, becoming initiated into the Siddha Kundalini lineage and the nature mysticism of Andean Peru. She brings indigenous traditions in the UK as a guardian of the Yawanawa and Tucano people of Amazonian Brazil, and as a partner of the Akasha Retreat Center in Rio de Janeiro, a trustee of TreeSisters, and a founding member of Friends of the River Medway. Jimena is continuing her studies in equine facilitated therapies, accompanied by her life partner, 3 flourishing youngsters, Jana, Zofia, and Ashen, and her beloved herd of horses. We explore the themes of motherhood, embodied listening, and generous activism in this conversation called Remembering the Power of Who We Are, where we speak to the question, how can simple ways of living in beauty and balance forge effective change in a turmoiled world? We hope that you enjoy this episode and that it opens up some simple remembrance and stillness within. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. Jimena, I am delighted to welcome you to The Future is Beautiful. Thank you for being here with us today and sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so very happy to be here and really appreciate the offering that you're giving.
Our first question is, what does the future is beautiful, or a beautiful future, mean to you?
This was very interesting for me to sit with, because I actually am living so in the moment at the moment, at times that we're in, because I found myself in the past year thinking, I know we've all been navigating the uncertainty and the challenge in different ways. And there were a few periods in which I became quite overwhelmed by what was happening all over the world, and had my attention far outstretched into all the different areas of the things that are going on that I don't I don't think I have to mention, but we all are aware of very much so at this time. And that overwhelm brought me into awareness of really needing to pull back and bring myself into very, very small steps and being fully aware of every precious moment, more than ever before, being very vigilant of my thoughts and my words and my intentions. And as I came into that place, I started to realize how much power there is in every moment. And when I was asked, when I looked at this question, I thought about the future being beautiful, I thought, well, every moment we are creating the future, because in a few seconds is our future again. And so I feel a huge potency in remembering that, and in not feeling that the future is something intangible and too far away, and that we are creating our future every moment, in every action, in every deed. But most importantly, the power of our thoughts and our words and our intention in everything we do with everyone we're with, and how much that can either expand the feeling that we have or contract. So, do you want to be part of the expansion? Of course, we do. So, continue to really be aware of what we're bringing to every moment. And that's like literally little things that can bring us into that contraction, and being aware of this. This is something I just discovered recently is more powerful than I ever had valued. By doing this as well in my life, I've got a lot of activity in my communities here in Forest Row in Sussex, but also in Brazil. These activities are quite fulfilling, and cleaning our local river, working with TreeSisters, embodying the sacred feminine, and doing work, healing and transformational work through the work with my horses, through the work I do in Brazil. All of these things make me feel that there's an opening to the future being very beautiful, and us being a whole part of creating that individually and collectively.
I love that. And I love that reminder that the future isn't far away, and that it can be imagined as this abstract thing that's like, and that's so far away. And then spiritual kind of people can be like, it's all about being present. But for me, it's that intentionality of our presence, where you recognize that whatever you're doing right now, whatever you're thinking right now, whatever you're feeling right now is part of that co-creation. And I love how you share, that the future's only a few seconds away. It doesn't have to be something that is conceptualized in this kind of time that's really far away, and where the world is radically different.
No, exactly. If it becomes so distant, it feels intangible and like a faraway dream. And so I loved sitting with that question and thinking, yeah, no, it's here, it's now, it's literally seconds away. So what are we doing to make it beautiful at this very moment, and for the next moments, and this day, and this week, and this month? This is it. This is our lives. This is the present. And I'm sure you know that expression that says, if you want to be sad, look at the past. If you want to be anxious, look at the future. If you want to be happy, be in the moment. Well, that's where I was saying about the overwhelm. I think my anxiety rose looking at the far distant future, or looking at a future that could not be very beautiful, and bringing it back and reining back my attention to the very moment and to what I could do right now was very helpful to feeling that things could be much more beautiful.
Yeah, I love that there's the possibility is here in the moment. And of course, it's helpful to have some understanding of where things could go in different directions in the future, and also where things have been in the past, but to live with what is available right now. And I feel like that's something that through this pandemic, we've all been invited to live more in that way. If we decided to take that invitation, because it has been hard to plan in ways that maybe we've been used to, and to know what might unfold.
Yeah, exactly. So this has been a huge gift. It's been a challenge, obviously, for most of us, but actually it keeps us more present and more grounded and more rooted. But also, when we speak about that, I'm aware of people who are going through a lot of suffering at the moment. And I've been told in the past, well, yeah, what if your moment, being in the moment, is really unpleasant? And I think that's something also to recognize and acknowledge, that the more we can sit with actually what's happening and be with it, the sooner we'll get through those difficulties, or the difficult emotions, or the difficulties that are coming. So rather than avoiding, pushing it away, as they say, what you resist persists. And so if you can actually be with what's happening fully, then you can also move through those moments and create what you'd like to from what's happening, or come through and emerge into a different time that is more beautiful.
Yeah, and invite in the creativity so that you can imagine pathways forward out of that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, sometimes I think, just to speak to, in my case, in the past year, I've been going through a health crisis that warranted me to become quite inactive and be in recovery mode. There was a lot of despair at times. And so it's very difficult to actually even call in that creativity when you're in that space, which can, I found some very dark moments during that period, especially this past winter. Yeah, where I was still continuing 8 months of physical pain and difficulty through this tropical virus that I contracted in Brazil. And actually, in that despair, in those moments of darkness, is when you have it's the hardest time to access anything, of all the tools and techniques and methods that you might have learned along the way. It's as if there's nothing there. And so just to speak to that for anyone who's listening, who might think, yeah, well, actually it's, easier said than done. It's absolutely true, and it's absolutely right. And I think allowing ourselves sometimes to even sink and be fully in that despair, and then this is where, as they say, you reach rock bottom. There's only one way out, this climbing slowly out, and eventually our heart's desires, thankfully, spark us through and bring through a gentle stepping forward. And so this is a really precious time to be aware as well of the very moment, and to be able to be with that. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be pleasant, but it does mean that we can then be creating the more beautiful future that we'd like to see by being fully present to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I always find that in my moments of deep descent into the darkness, that you never really know how long you're going to be there and and how you're going to get out. But somehow I always find that when I come back up to the surface, that I've always learned something, or I've found some profound new understanding that I've brought with me that has deepened possibility. I feel like if you take that opportunity to kind of accept that we live in these cycles where there are descents, and descents are healthy, there's a whole kind of nourishing nutritional process somehow within that cycle, and that actually we're able to hold more than we imagine, especially if we have some of the things that humans need to thrive, such as community and good people around us that can handle these moments of descent, not necessarily do anything, but just be like, yeah, I see you and I'm here. And I've been there too. And maybe I'm there right now. And it's okay, because there can be such an emphasis in this culture on being fine, or being amazing, love and light. And then that can make it even more isolating, because we then forget this very human thing, that we go on these journeys and we live in these cycles.
Yeah, and I think it's key what you said is having acceptance for these cycles, just like the seasons. So, we're now in spring, and of course we're all feeling more outwards and blossoming here in England, and coming to the summer where you've come back fuller, and that autumn descent and into the deeper winter is the natural part of life within us as well. And as you said, I think sometimes the deeper you dive, and the darker it can be, the most amazing treasures to be found when you do emerge the other side. It's the darkest hours just before the dawn. And if we could trust, I think trust is such an incredibly kind of like just not so focused. A lot of people talk about, for example, having confidence. And then I look at it and I think, well, actually, it's more about trusting. If we can trust these deep dives and what they'll bring for us at the moment, remember, okay, I'm in that space. This is what's happening. I remember this happening before. Now, what can I do to really help myself get through it? Perhaps a little bit quicker. If not, obviously it can linger and dwell is not what we'd want. And so what can I do to really allow myself the space I need to go in as full as I can, to find those treasures and bring them out, and but also giving the space and the time. But it's trusting the processes, the acceptance and the trusting that whatever's happening is how it needs to be, with the outcome perhaps not being exactly what we would like, but being what we need for that time.
Yeah, and there's something in there about having the intuition to kind of know like how long you need to be there, that so that you find that right balance between not jumping out too quickly so that you don't get the full process, but also not lingering too long so that you get stuck. And that's
it's a delicate balance. Yeah, it's exactly. It is a delicate balance. And I think you're absolutely right. Having friends, family, support, community around us is essential. And a part of our better survival systems is ensuring that we have that. And that's not always the case for people. And so that's obviously makes it a lot harder. And so, anyone who's listening thinks, so yeah, maybe this is an idea, because really creating that around us is crucial. It's crucial to our well-being. I think at times people find themselves realize, oh yeah, I actually could do with deepening my relationships with a few people that I can then call upon, have more intimacy to say, I'm actually going through a really difficult time and I've got to go through it. And but I just feel like I wanted to let someone know, and to perhaps hold from afar, feel that support, even if it's without having to say anything. But as you say, just, okay, I see you. I'm here if you need me.
Yeah. Well, I called you last week and asked you to do that for me with a situation that there's absolutely nothing you can do to help except just for me to know that you're there, and then to not feel alone with these complex things that we have to hold at different times as humans.
Yeah, and it was such an honor, Amisha. Thank you. And I'm so glad we could make that time and to be able to just listen and hear you and feel kinship and sisterhood of being daughter, sister, and family member responsibilities that we have, and being able to, again, just from afar, be there for each other.
In your journey as an activist, and there are so many things that in the time that we've known each other, I've known you to be active with and to be gathering people and support and awareness towards. Can you share a little bit around either your journey or some of the projects that you've been involved in, or some of what you've learned about how one shows up for things that move them?
Yeah. Before I get into that, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, because something that came up for me was considering who I am today, of this huge journey I've been on. and bringing forth a new bio to reflect this moment in time, and coming to terms and acceptance and feeling the honor of being mother, which is often undervalued in our society, and is actually, as we all know, one of the most important jobs in the universe. And I bring this, as you asked that question about being an activist and everything I've done, because I wanted to be a mother before I was born. I'm sure of it. It's part of our DNA. And actually, I've spent a lifetime in this patriarchal society that we've all, I was going to say like are victims of, but I'm not going to put it that
We're
far,
all traveling through.
that we're traveling through. Exactly. And a constant feeling of having to do and having to be someone and something and put my imprint on the world. And as I did this new bio of 2021 for this particular occasion, now that my youngsters are all in their 20s, decided, you know what, I want to challenge this really sad perception of like mother being, oh yeah, okay, or house care. How do they call it? There's housewife and there's house person who looks after the household.
Keeper.
Housekeeper, what have you. Yeah. And it's like actually one of literally the most important jobs. And we are all mothered in some way or another and parented, and the effects that has on the future of so our own children, but so many people that are affected by our children, etc. The ripples go out, and it's essential. So I was really quite happy to be able to kind of put that on there as, yeah, no, actually, this is probably the most important job I've done in this lifetime.
Thank you, Jimena, for mentioning the importance of motherhood. And I happen to know all of your children and what fantastic humans they are. And it's really such a credit to you for the dedication that you have given to this role. Can you share more about what that journey has been for you and how you have raised such wonderful children that are all very individual and open and interested in so many things? And it's always such a joy to have them around. You know, when I met them, they were teenagers, and there was never that sense of like, oh, there's teenagers around. Like, it was always such a pleasure and a joy to be around them.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to see them, how they engaged they are in life generally. And I think you raise your children as you are and who you are. And I've always been someone who's engaged in life very strongly and intensely myself. But I think my mother in particular for giving us, my sister and I, a really strong passion and zest for life. And also my stepdad, who was absolutely lovely to have for a few years of my life, my young life. He passed when I was 12. That really taught me how quickly someone can go and how precious life is. And at that young age, to feel that was quite sudden. It was a car accident. So that combination, made for really living life fully as much as possible in every moment. And I know that that's definitely passed on to my youngsters. But something that I wanted, speaking of motherhood, is like what's interesting is we think when we come to the time of having a child, we consider that this is something that little bit somehow we've learned that it's like from top down, the way that we're going to educate and parent them, and we're going to influence them and give them all the love and everything they need. But what I found hugely revelatory was actually that it's like a cycle, and your children are actually triggering the responses needed for our growth as a mother, as a parent. Yeah, this was something I learned in time, and looking back, thought, crikey, actually, they've sculpted me into who I am just as much as I obviously have done that, and their dad, their father, and and all the people around them. It takes a community or a village to raise a child. But also for me, the connection of motherhood and mother goes beyond the actual physical human experience. I have a very deep relationship with our great mother, Mama Gaia, Pachamama. And I've been learning a lot with my meditations about the actual beating of the earth beneath our feet and Gaia consciousness. I actually, in my practice, every morning, I pray and ask to be of service to the Divine Mother. This is something that's come with time, and I've enjoyed thoroughly being able to expand my heart and more compassion and more love, because at the end of the day, it is the Holy Mother that her arms can stretch out as far as there are no limits. And so having this remembrance and this connection allows me to then constantly be giving love, which is why I put in the title of this podcast was "Love is our portal." It just feels like that is the way to our ascension or our higher frequency and our higher expanding consciousness, is by opening our hearts and always giving love to every part of ourselves that we can easily love, but more to the parts that we have difficulty loving, and also extending that to the people around us and to everything, actually. Everything. Just the more love we can give, the more everything softens and smooths and opens and expands. The journey of motherhood is giving me that gift. I'm so happy for that.
Thank you for sharing those words, because it feels that often these like basic roles of being human and how we create the future literally through our children, through the future generations, but also that there is so much that's so key to life and having a good life that's not part of the economic system. And so there can be such an emphasis on what do you do? What have you created? What money have you made? These kinds of aspects, or, you know, okay, well, we have these children and they're doing very well. They're making this much money or whatever it is, you know, when they grow up, and less of an emphasis on the kind of economically rewarded work that is actually very much the heart of our society. And of course, this is like there are many ways to be a mother, and there are many ways to be a homemaker. That can be something that is all around just like getting the bare minimum done to kind of keep everything going, or it can be around making very conscious choices. And it's all so time consuming. And then there's at the same time all of these other pressures on everyone to make money and to do this and to do that. And the pandemic both offered like a break to all of the motion, but also for many, it was like finding themselves in smallish spaces with everybody homeschooling and working all on different screens, and just that kind of recognition that actually the system doesn't really work very well.
That's right. Absolutely. And this whole goal of achieving rather than being, something I've learned during the pandemic is my desire to simplify, because this is the issue, is we were all feeling, or I was feeling, that we all have to make enough money to have this and have that and make this, maintain that, and perhaps go on more trips and do the other things that we want to do. But actually to be able to rein that back is also creates more sustainability in our beautiful planetary home. But yeah, to rein it back and simplify things and bring back the joy in actually being a good mother and cooking nutritious meals, and not having to fly around feeling like you've got to, not only, you know, the making money is going to be there at a basic or more or what have you level, but it feels like there's a lot of pressure on both men and women, but now women, to hold a home and manage all of that, which takes a lot of time and effort. And of course, there's a lot more balance now in men taking responsibility as well. But it does tend to be on the laps of women, because, of course, our children come from within our bodies, and they need us more in their early years for certain. Then there's that pressure of being able to put your mark on the world and doing and all these things. And actually, I'm really very hopeful that we can remember exactly what you're saying, that the hearth is at the center of all of this. And we really could do with nurturing that and being present with it and simplifying the rest of our life so that that is wholesome and good and full of love. And from then everything can extend out in much slower, simpler, and at ease and grace and beauty for everyone, and less attachment to all these other things that in the end don't even give much fulfillment, happiness anyway. Everyone rushing around and eating less healthy and all that, there's just a distortion of values, isn't there? So long hail the mothers and the homemakers, and of course the fathers too. If we can all remember how much we can do with the mothering, is something I feel that we can pass on to each other as good sisters and brothers to each other. Also with that caring, that compassion is something that obviously our world needs ever more of. So that is my hope. That's why I put on my bio for the first time, before conscious entrepreneur, which I have been and I am, and before community leader, which I've been a strong community leader and I am, and a horsewoman, which is emerging very recently after many, many years working with horses. I can feel that coming through. I thought, first of all, I almost put it third, mother, because I thought, if people see it there, mother, they'll be like, well, oh yeah, okay. We can all do that on the side. You don't have to put it on your title. You don't have to put it in your bio. But no, that is what I am first and foremost. And then come the other things from there. And to be proud of that is new for me, to put it in that place. So I'm very grateful for having had that chance to visit it and think of and feel it and bring that through. So thank you, Amisha, again for that.
And then from there, your activism journey.
Yeah, so I've actually included my youngsters in a lot of my activism. So they know very well how that started in my life. Was age 12, I was living in Buenos Aires. So I grew up in California, in San Francisco area. And we went to live back in the hometown of my mum and my father. When I was 12 years old, it was in the 80s. Breakdancing had become quite a big thing. So I spent a summer breakdancing on the pedestrian streets of the capital of Argentina, having a really great time. And I was so proud of it being all about the dancing that my friend, my partner in crime, in beautiful dancing crime, was we had decided that we didn't want to put a hat out and collect any money, that we were doing it just for the passion of dance. And there came a day, after having spent weekend after weekend making friends with a lot of other kids who were on the streets for other reasons, there came a day where we had 3 rows of people around us, egging us on and rooting for us. And our routine was only 1.5 minutes or something like that, 2 minutes. We had to keep on rewinding our cassette tape and replaying and doing our routine again and again. And actually people started to throw money onto our flattened cardboard that we spun on, backspin and those things. And they were throwing so much cash that we looked at each other and we thought, why haven't we been doing this before? This is so crazy. Look at the amount of money that we get. Found a hat, started to collect. And we invited our dear colleagues of that summer who'd been hanging out on the streets as well. And we would exchange dance moves with them. And we decided to invite them, about 5 friends, to lunch. And at the time, dare even say this on your podcast, because the future is beautiful and the past was McDonald's. And
that was my first taste of meat at the age of 11, was in McDonald's. So.
Oh my God. No, yeah. So you've done better to taste meat in Argentina than anywhere else. But bless you. I'm sorry to hear that. Anyway, well, the first ever McDonald's had just arrived to Buenos Aires, and so it was a big deal. And they actually had like a butler, host, waiter at the door with a little bow tie. And we brought our 5 friends to come in, but they had dirty shirts and ripped up clothes, and some of them didn't have shoes on. And this butler man said, no, they can't come in. My friend and I said, being bolshy American children, youngsters, we said, no, they're our friends. We're paying. We're coming in. And we went in and made the order. And when we brought it to the table, 2 out of the 5 of them grabbed the food before we could even put it down and were scoffing it down in a way that was just, it just, I just stepped back and realized this whole time, all those weeks and the whole summer holidays that we've been hanging out with them, I had no idea that they could be so hungry. And as I watched them, it was like this divine kind of message at the TAF kind of thing. Literally, it was like a white light came down and I saw the word street children and the injustice of it. My friend and I, having been given a little bit of money from our parents to go to the cinema and eat out, but not wanting to do that and rather be dancing on the streets, not telling them because at the time it wasn't very acceptable. And seeing the kids of our age going through hunger and how actually, obviously then the reality of what, knowing that they'd been sometimes begging on the streets, but we didn't think anything of it at the time. And just, it's a great thing about being children and not judging. And just, so we hung out with them as equals and then saw them like in this light. And so that moment was for me key to my mission. And I was always quite surprised that my dear best friend at the time didn't get that message. He was like, he wanted to be a biochemist. And I was like, but you were there with me. I mean, you saw what happened, how bizarre. But obviously, you speak to people in different ways. And I went on from there to do volunteer work in Latin America from the age of 14, 15. In different countries in Ecuador and Mexico, and with different organizations that were like junior Peace Corps kind of organizations, youth development thing, trainings and things like that. And it was definitely what I knew was my calling. And so when I went to live in Brazil, I helped found the Seeds of Light program. And that was my first kind of official entrance into the world of social justice. From there, I met the father of my children, and we traveled around the world and ended up in England, where I seized the opportunity to create an organization called Action for Brazil's Children's Trust to do what, interestingly, at the time was very clear to me. There was a lot more affluence in Britain, and I began to learn the ways of, it's the charity world. But I still saw it as activism. I found it quite difficult to jump from what I had been doing, which was very much on the ground and grassroots, to creating events, serving champagne and canapes, and selling auction items that were generously and graciously donated to people to have a beautiful, entertaining evening. It was actually quite a shock to my system, actually, but at the beginning, but I grew used to that. And that organization expanded and grew, and was very, very proud of the work we did in Brazil, because it was only, culmination of the 20 years that I dedicated my life to that work, that it became more clear that actually what we had established was much more profound than I could ever have imagined. And so I left that work very fulfilled, and at a time of emerging environmental crisis becoming louder, and the feeling that, well, there wasn't much point in doing things in communities and, creating internet access and education and all these different trainings and policies that we were helping to put through the government if there wasn't going to be clean water or air to breathe, etc. So I wound down the organization, a very gentle process, which took 5 years and was quite a challenge to my patients, but very good learnings for me, and sculpting of the new self that I needed to become to then do the work I did through fossil-free movement and ecocide law campaigning alongside Polly Higgins, who I absolutely adore, admire, and feel very present actually right now. But generally, she gives me a lot of, good, juicy hope in my heart. Special woman.
For anyone here that doesn't know Polly, you can listen to her on this podcast. And it was actually, it was only made maybe 6 months or so before she got ill. So it's one of her last sort of big interviews where she tells a lot of her story. And it's a beautiful one to listen to.
Well, actually, I didn't know that she'd done that with you. I really look forward to hearing it. Thank you for, that would be lovely to hear her speaking with you. So, doing that was also very, very inspiring. What's interesting for me in the overall picture of that work is that identification I had with the kids when I realized what they were actually going through, the children that I spoke of on the streets of Buenos Aires. We were breakdancing that summer so long ago. It's only in time that I realized, of course, as I had my own opportunities for inner healing, I realized that I had been very identified by the abandonment that had happened in my own family lineage. My mother was abandoned by her mother when she was 2.5 years old. And I only met my father when I was 17. So on both sides, the maternal and the paternal, that seed of abandonment that was so big for me that I actually just felt drawn to children who had been abandoned, neglected in one way or another. And I literally could not sleep in peace at night without doing that work. I remember a lot of people would come to me and say, gosh, it's amazing what you're doing, years later as it developed. And aren't you fantastic? And all that kind of thing. And I felt like I was cheating them because I felt, well, actually, I just can't sleep at night, knowing that there are children in these situations being vulnerable to what comes towards them by being on the streets. Now, in my 48th year, looking back, I can see how my own healing and the peace that grew within me, it is reflected in the work that I was moved to then do more and more of. I'd always been drawn and hearing them very connected to trees, particularly, actually, funny enough, and to nature, and feeling very much myself as part of nature and being nature. And so that as a young child, so it was like there came a point where I could actually allow myself to turn towards this. And it was part of my inner development as well, and feeling more whole myself. And this has moved on to doing, what's interesting is I started off wanting to, expand and work as far reaching as possible, and managing to work with the foundation that we helped to partner. We partnered with Action for Brazil's Children's Trust, and they're called Street Child United. And that was it is a global platform for young children and young people at risk around the world. And we had support from Desmond Tutu, Prince William, David Beckham. It's like very global and glamorous in that way, and just amazing feeling around it. Having said that, that's what brought my attention to actually the work we've been doing in Brazil on more local grassroots level. Actually felt like it was really deeper in many ways and more long-term change. But going out, doing that global, and actually as I've got older, reducing my scope as I've healed different aspects of myself, coming more towards my own garden and bringing my attention to the local rivers here in Sussex, which we only recently found out are the most polluted in all of Britain and Europe. So it's just interesting to watch that parallel journey of my own development and healing and what I'm doing now. And also the part of doing what I'm doing with the TreeSisters, how long I've come, I had very loving and beautiful partners in my life and really good men that I partnered with. But of course, they were also traveling through the patriarchal system and that upbringing and conditioning. I can see now how I often was in a passive role and how I've grown into, in a more equal relationship with my partner. And then that reflecting in the work we're doing through Tree Sisters and through nature-based leadership and feminine leadership, and allowing the sacred feminine to arise in our wildness and our freedom and everything that we innately are and has been suppressed and oppressed, and all of that coming through now today in a more gentle form. I think sometimes until you can find that space of grace, you push yourself through when you discover that you've been slightly, in an oppressive place within yourself or in the environment you've been living in, etc. And I had that push through, and now I can feel that settling of more balance and living in a way of beauty and grace with all of this. Really happy with that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. There's so much there. And I love the kind of explanation of how your own inner relationship with yourself and your own healing opens up what you're moved to do in the world. And that this is kind of a common theme of there's so much happening in this world and there's so much that needs our attention. And yet we all have only a limited amount of resource. The way that this dominant culture designs our lives also makes it quite a struggle to kind of manage just the day-to-day. And so then that time and energy that we have for what we contribute to is limited. And one of the questions that I'm asked a lot is, how do you choose? How do you devote your energy to a certain part of this new story? Or, because there's so many causes that need time and volunteers and money and resources. And of course, if you're living in this world with your heart open, you're touched by all of it, but then you have to make decisions of where you're going to show up at different moments.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, I guess what's happened for me is that I've settled within myself, and rather than being led by my mind, I've been led more and more by my heart. And actually, to be able to do so, we need stillness, and we need to exercise deeper listening. By doing this, I actually became more aligned with myself and with the activities that I could do in a balanced way, and continue to be a good mother, a good partner, a good sister, and present fully to family and friends as well. And I think what I encountered, and especially in the social justice sector at the time, is there's a lot of wounding and a lot of acting and reacting through the experience of individuals. And that gets in the way, actually, of the development of organizations and of the work people are intending to do. And so actually it's a bit of a contradiction. It's really interesting to observe. And as you say, having that limitation of where do you put your energy, where do you put your time? People overwork themselves and also martyrize themselves in that area. And this can become a jumbled space, actually. And it's really, really important. I feel very, very important to be taking your own health, your own well-being into consideration when you're looking at what you'd like to do and what you can offer out into the world. And so a part of my journey has been very much finding my own stillness and being calm in this world generally. Again, it's another thing that I feel somehow is so undervalued. We feel like we need to do, and how we're going to do it. And well, actually being calm in this moment in time is hugely valuable, because we're all been, pulled into different directions and feel at times exasperated by what's going on, what's being said, and what to believe and what might happen and all these things. And so actually being able to be a source of calm in the middle of this huge storm that we're in the eye of the hurricane, as they say, is of huge value and really quite understated. And when we can find that calm, we can then view things in a way that's more in balance and see more clearly where we can place ourselves and what we can do without overexerting ourselves and pushing things, and in a way that actually creates a nice flow of support, but also of goodness for ourselves and balance.
I love that when we're in that space of stillness and kind of in our own energy and in a space of connection, deep relationship with nature, and with that, the listening that's available to us, that then we can, it's like we're inspired to act. It's a very kind of creative motion. It's very different when I remember my 20s and like being in a very kind of reactive, like mind-centered space around like how to make the world better, and it being like this sort of this big problem to solve, like through the power of mind, and there's never enough and that you can do, and it's like this huge pressure. What I found is that when I come into that space of stillness and connection and I move from there, within it, there's a kind of understanding that the end result isn't always the point. It's like, it's actually just how you show up. And it's also through that connection, in a way, what you can give becomes more. The distinction's very subtle, but it's very tangibly different when you feel it.
Absolutely, exactly. And actually, this brings me to remember that one of the not so helpful experiences that were happening when I was in that state of my 20s and feeling this momentum inside myself grow, like all that needed to be done. And it's also actually a little bit of like the ego of like, well, it won't be done without me. My children had that same struggle. They felt the struggle with me because I was so in that place of despair with what needed to go on there. I was rushed and continuously overdoing and pushing myself, and my attention was in so many places. And actually, whether you're raising children or you are just trying to be a good person in general and in all the areas of your life, being in that state is really unhelpful. Yeah, it created a lot of chaos for us, for our family. And I think that's what I look back and I think, yeah, interesting. And I was still coming from a state of my own confusion and chaos of my upbringing and the things I was carrying of not only abandonment, but all the other bits and bobs that we tend to have to work through, and acting from those places. And the more I could, thankfully, all the teachers and people that have come into my path and different types of healing modalities that I've been able to clear and embrace these parts of myself, yeah, the more settled I've become in the notion of being enough, which is something that we don't actually taught or expressed in our society. It's actually to the contrary. It's like the culture is, we're not enough. We need to do more. We need to be more. We need to, and it really can get in the way of what we're hoping in our hearts. And if we can actually reverse that and actually be in a place of peace with the little that we can do, or the lots that we can do, but from where we're sitting in a place of calmness and a place of stillness, then we're actually going to ripple out a lot more goodness. I'm absolutely certain of that. I can see very clearly in my own life and how that's just expanded. As you said, you feel it within you. Sometimes I've struggled with it and thought, have I had the tangible outcomes and results that I used to have when I worked so hard within the NGO sector? That actually, I know that I'm coming from a more solid foundation. And so you build upon things perhaps a bit slower, but something that's going to be a lot more long lasting. I can see that and feel that for sure.
Hello. We're taking a short pause from the conversation. On behalf of our team and our community, thank you for being here and co-creating The Future is Beautiful. Much dedication, love, and time goes into the production of this show. We believe in being advertising free in a world that's always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. And so we make this show with you and for you, thanks to your support. There are 3 ways you can be more involved, so we can share the vision, wisdom, and creativity here as we explore what it means to be a human in this time. You can support the podcast by sharing it with your friends, posting episodes on social media, and doing iTunes reviews. You can support as a patron by making a monthly or one-off donation of your choice. And with this, you join the global patrons group and monthly video calls where we share connection and insight. You get to know the other amazing patrons from around the world, their stories and their work, and you offer direct support to me and the team, as well as being brought into the behind the scenes of creating something like this. It sounds like a lot, but it's as much or as little as you want to get involved in. You can become a member of Presence, our membership collective of care and practice, where we explore how to embody the themes of the podcast with workshops, calls, special events, tree whispers, and powerful tools, practices, and rituals that you can bring into your life. This is open to absolutely everybody as we create an inclusive and diverse space that celebrates well-being as a human right, where we explore together what it means to be creative, courageous, and connected to ourselves, each other, and the earth. This is about embodying sacred activism. We love meeting patrons and Presence members and how being part in this way weaves our lives together, as well as making this show possible. If anything from this conversation has moved or inspired you, please get more involved. All information can be found at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. This show really can't go on without your patronage and Presence membership, so please do make it happen. And now back to the conversation. I had a question around belonging and how that's been a feature of your journey, and I guess just reflecting on the different cultures of like your parents and your ancestors, and then you've lived in America and in England and Brazil, and how has that journey of belonging been, or have you always just seen things very kind of borderless in your understanding?
Yeah, it's been an interesting one. Yeah, I realize that it's actually transmuted in time, the feeling I have. And there have been moments of feeling more belonging and lots of moments of feeling less belonging and not even being clear that it's about being in a different culture, right? And just thinking it's something within myself. And when I go back to California, I do feel a part of me very much at home. And in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, I do feel a part of me, a smaller part probably, because I only lived there a few years, but that's home and it's my culture, it's my mom who raised us. I feel that mother home. But funny enough, I ended up in Brazil, age 20, and I lived there for 3 years before I came to England. I traveled from Rio to the south of Bahia, and when the door of the bus opened, and I literally just felt the breeze come in, I had never felt so at home in my life. So it's age 20. I'd lived in California, Spain, and Argentina. And suddenly it was something I had never experienced before. And I didn't know what it was. It took some time to gather what had happened there. And I realized I really wanted to be in this place for longer. And this is where I created roots and built a home. And my first daughter was born there in Bahia. I feel very much in tune with this, particularly big-hearted people, and love reigns in Bahia, something that really spoke to me. And I left quite prematurely and traveled around the world with the father of my younger 2 children, and then came to England, where I felt completely foreign and really out of place. I remember going to little children's groups at coffee mornings, and when I would say where I was from, really proudly, thinking this would be fascinating for people. You know, where are you? They'd ask, well, so where are you from? And I thought, where am I from? I'm from California, Argentina, and Brazil. I'm not just from one place. That's definitely those other parts of me. And when I would say that, sometimes people would step back. Yeah, like, oh, too much, too much, too foreign, too mixed. I can't deal with this. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting experience. But I was so used to, I'd moved around so much that I was so used to feeling that I just kind of adapted to it. And I guess it creates quite a lot of independent resilience and this kind of thing. And so my belonging has been something that's evolved, and it's definitely been an inner journey of feeling my own belonging within myself. And I suspect now, as we speak about it, that it's also what has welcomed my spiritual journey of accessing the multidimensional aspects of myself and of the literally cosmic energies and earth energies and the elements, elementals. As I'm speaking to you now, that drew me into a much deeper belonging, a feeling of belonging that is beyond borders, cultures, countries, where we're from. Because at the end of the day, we all come from the stars. Literally, quite literally, we are stardust, the same as the stars. And so that has enriched my feeling of belonging massively. I'm so grateful for it.
Thank you. Can you tell us a bit more about the water project that you're working on in Sussex? Yeah, why we need it?
Yeah, it's an initiative that was started by a dear friend here in Sussex, because he's actually Tristram Stewart. He does really great food waste projects. He used to fish in the river that goes through their family land. They would catch fish with their hands as children and had a very beautiful time growing up there. And now, sadly, it's so many toxins in it. There's hardly any fish. So he took it upon himself to create a group of people to help support the well-being of the river, to restore the health and vitality of our local Upper Medway, of the Upper Medway. Yeah, so we've got 3 different areas that we're working on. One is more practical with community litter picks and doing things that, testing and researching, awareness raising, education, campaigning. So doing the kind of things that are practical, by engaging the community. We're also partnering, collaborating with other types of organizations that are doing this work so that we can hopefully create a network with a unified voice here in Britain. And then that's the practical action. And we've got the legal part of things, which includes enforcing existing laws, but also campaigning so that the rights of rivers are recognized, which is quite a new concept and is just building up. And we also have a sacred impulse that focuses on facilitating connection, honor, and care for the river. So we just had a community litter pick on Saturday here in Forest Row, in which we started by opening a circle and doing beautiful exercise I had never done before, a water movement. Kind of felt like a qigong, but it was using our arms, particularly in the forms of the flow of the river, to the sounds that this woman brought to us. Well, it was quite special. And so we did that, and a poem was read that was astonishingly divinely led, and really, really high frequency. And so even the people there who had come with tools and were ready to just clear the sides of the river and were more in a very practical mode, and perhaps hadn't experienced this type of ceremony, or we also sang songs and then gave flowers to everyone to put in some intention into the flowers and offer to the river. So there were a few people there who found this all a bit foreign and weren't too sure about it. But by the end of it, you could feel that, okay, they understood that it might be a bit far-fetched for them, but it was meant to be in a way for us all to connect more to what was happening, to the waters that run within our own bodies, and how the importance of the rivers in our life. So that was very beautiful, and we're just learning about combining that work and in these 3 arms of the organization that we're creating.
Beautiful. And what's the organization called?
It's called Friends of the River Medway. And if you Google that, you'll find it very easily, formedway.org. Yeah, have a look there. It's quite just lovely. And it's actually one of my daughters who is leading the group. Yeah, she's a lot of the content. She's a great writer. She's created it. She's worked really hard on it. And the group is very, very blessed to have quite a professional group of people that have got a lot of experience in different areas. And it's exciting to feel that we may be either creating a precedent or supporting the precedent that is needed, basically, here in the UK. Yeah, it's a really, really great project.
And what else feels really important for you right now in this space and in this time that we're in?
I'd say going back to what I feel really is the biggest gift we can give, with the simplicity of being calm. I actually feel like we sometimes have overcomplicated ourselves with fancy ideas of what we need to be doing. And actually, it's in the simple that we can create more effective change, especially in these times where we're shifting from our notion that the mind is, well, our minds are loud and busy and make themselves heard so much quicker than our heart in general. And so we've had that, our attention there, and the shift towards hearing our hearts and coming into this deeper listening is essential for bringing in these new times. That's my feeling. In my morning practice, this is what I do, is connect in to be able to hear more clearly what the innermost yearnings of my heart, and the messaging that comes through that requires to be still and to be quiet, to hear this messaging that is of true spirit. And I think at these times, the more we can do this, and the more we can be in our feeling bodies rather than in our thinking, we'll then be able to draw, to bring that beautiful future that we'd like to be experiencing. And so this is essential. I think this is like something that, it's an essential way of being, and something that we can only be practicing as lucidly or as fully as we are capable. But if we can move towards that, even in slow steps, this is something that actually will create a much more nourishing, fertile ground for everything that we want to bring through, for being the change that we'd like to see. And even when we go back to what we were talking about before, and the importance of what we're bringing into the fields that we're in, the energetic field, our own awareness, the awareness of who we're with, the awareness of what we're doing. And we really become more considered and more careful about what we're bringing into the space within ourselves and around us. But by doing so, we're only expanding more and more goodness and the uplifting energy that we need to create this fertile ground that I'm speaking about. It's like, as my indigenous family of the Amazon say, onwards and upwards. And the only way to go onwards and upwards is by growing that space of goodness. It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than this. Being in that feeling space and being aware of everything we bring to it is what I think is of utmost importance in these times.
This is not an easy question to answer, I know. So I wonder what you can share around how one goes from the thinking into the feeling. And I know it's not an easy question, because for me, if you were to ask me, how did I do it? It was through years of yoga and ceremonies and smashing through conditioning and opening up to aspects of myself that I didn't know, until there was a moment where I realized that I was living from a different place. So yeah, I'm asking knowing that there's not like kind of 3 simple like things that you can do today, but how would you invite our friends listening to begin or deepen into that process?
Well, I actually think there are some steps that you can take that are quite relatively,
Excellent.
to follow that. For everyone, there's a different way that might speak better way to each person that we have access to. And today you can research whatever feels right to you at the time. But what I would say very simply, but every morning I'm doing now as of quite a long time, and I can feel the effects, the benefits, is by doing it with very simple meditations that help to bring to quieten the mind. This is literally just breathing with 5-second sections. So breathing in for 5 seconds, holding for 5 seconds, and breathing out for 5 seconds. Doing that for initially 5 minutes, and then if you can for 10, if you can for 20, as your practice grows, is a really, really good way of helping to bring your thoughts into more spaciousness. So there's more spaciousness between your thoughts. And when you're doing that, you come to a place of a little bit more stillness already. Depends on, in the morning's a good time because obviously we're coming out of our sleep and coming out of our dreams. And it's a good time to anchor as an intention for the day. If you go into your day without doing anything, so you're just going from one activity to the next, of course, your mind starts to already become more and more active. And so by doing this in the morning, obviously then, there are different times of the day where you can remember and even do the breathing again, or just remember that space that you're in. And obviously I guess it does take time. Yeah, it does. I just forget how long it's taken, but to bring yourself back into that place that you felt more bliss and more stillness and more back into your feeling. I do this breathing as an initial part of my visualization meditation, which brings me quite quickly to a place where I can hear insights or messages, or however you like to put it. Sometimes people like to, say it's the angels or different cosmic energies that are bringing these messages, or if it's coming from within. At the end of the day, we're all one and the same. So by doing this exercise, we can then listen and hear some things that are quite helpful to us at that time or to our day. The work I'm doing at the moment is I'm integrating the care for my horses with transformational healing and studying equine facilitated therapy. And this is quite an embodied practice. And I can see how much quicker by working with the horses, people have to go from being in their mind to being in their bodies and to how they're feeling. There's like just no other way about it. So I'm quite enjoying learning more about this and actually experiencing it by doing my case studies and seeing how quickly it can bring people into their feeling body. There's been a lot of work around body expression. So rather than putting our focus and our attention to what our mind is saying or thoughts, is actually putting our attention to what our body is trying to tell us that is feeling. Generally, it would be most likely there'll be a bit of a contraction or a scrunchy feeling around our solar plexus because something doesn't feel right. This in itself is a very simple practice that takes time to make it more instant, but is actually a key to your feeling, is putting your focus and your attention towards what your body is trying to tell you rather than hearing all the thoughts and the activity in your mind. That's my tuppence.
Thank you. And what is a call to action that you'd like to leave us with? And I know that there's many that you've kind of dropped into the conversation already, but if there's something that our friends listening can take into action themselves from everything that they've heard, and if it helps, you can have like an inner one or an outer one. You've just shared the inner ones, really.
Yeah, and I've shared the inner ones. I've spoken about the river work, which I think would be great for people to have a look at the website and actually understand more deeply what we're doing, because it's very inspiring. And also as a trustee of TreeSisters, and having just had a very motivational and inspiring time with the team of TreeSisters, which involves, there were 13 of us, 13 women. And it was really quite beautiful to see it. We hadn't come together. I actually hadn't met the team. I've been a trustee for 2 years and I hadn't met the team yet because of the lockdowns and etc. It was just quite extraordinary to see how we settled into a kind of elders group and a young adult group of women. And the interchange of energies and all of the wonderful aspects of femininity that everyone's bringing forth. Yeah, this for me came at an interesting time when I thought I'd never want to be a trustee again in this lifetime. But I encountered the founder of Tree Sisters at a really wonderful event in London, and hearing her speak made me offer myself as a trustee before I could even see. I could see the words outside of my mouth, and I was trying to fish them back. Literally, I'd never had that happen in my life. And I thought, did I just say that? That's how inspiring she is.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've just done that. She is quite extraordinary. Claire Dubois, founder of Tree Sisters,
who has also recently been on the podcast, and it's a spectacular episode.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So my call to action is to, if you haven't already, visit TreeSisters.org, calling all women to discover our feminine response to climate change. It's a really empowering space for those who may not have yet found where to put that creative energy and that force and that concern and all the things that weave us together as sisters and as women. The work on the ground is absolutely phenomenal. It's a quite extraordinary example, and many different conscious companies and otherwise are actually trying to partner at a rate that we can't even follow at the moment and meet entirely, because it's just such a good model. And also Claire gives full moon meditations. And so there are many, you can fulfill yourself as a whole by just going on to the website and exploring all the different aspects. It also tree growth that are groups, women's circle groups that are being created. And there's a whole model of how to follow that if you would want to lead your own women's circle, women's group. And the groves are actually organic and sometimes can be very active in the world of campaigning or tree planting physically, or also just being support groups for your community. So it's a beautiful way to channel all the things that we'd innately like to be doing. So I highly recommend visiting TreeSisters.org.
Absolutely. And we're one of those organizations that are partnering. We're working on, when we launch our new membership in the autumn with our app, that will be integrated in with planting a forest with Tree Sisters.
Oh, that's fantastic. I didn't know that. That's really great news.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Jimena, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. And it's, really, really wonderful to hear. Of course, we're friends and we've known each other for quite some time now, but it's a different experience getting to ask you about your work and listening to your wisdom and your journey.
Thank you, Amisha. Thank you. Yeah, I've been able to get to know those parts of you through your work. And so I've always admired what you're doing. And I'd like to, just acknowledge your journey and everything you're bringing through with such wonderful grace and gusto. Bless you. Blessings to you and to your family and to all of your loved ones. And onwards and upwards we go.
Indeed. And how would you like people to connect with you? Because you don't have like your own website. So
Not yet. I'm actually in the process of getting that established, and that will come. And for now, I'm on the Tree Sisters website as a trustee. So that's one way of connecting. And otherwise, if someone would like to speak to me about any of the sorts of work, you can put my email address onto the podcast or somewhere there so that people can contact me directly.
Wonderful. And we'll be together on Saturday for our We Are Nature Avebury pilgrimage and panel conversation. And so that's another way that people can come and hear more. Yeah,
I really look forward to that. It's such an honor to be sitting on a panel with your lovely other guests. Yeah, it's going to be a very wonderful day. What a great initiative as well, by the way, Amisha, like such an encapsulation of everything that you do and who you are, just with an Avebury pilgrimage, going onto the panel, having a lovely dinner, really weaving everyone into themselves and into the group as a whole, the collective intention. Thank you for that. Such a beautiful way of doing things.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question. How will you create beauty in the world?